Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I wanted to talk about the loot boxes, both within Path of Exile and the general gaming community. But I wanted not to look at so much at the ethical side of loot boxes, but to look at the maths behind them and what sort of value proposition they pose. So, there's a lot of marketing of the Path of Exile cosmetic loot boxes, as you'll undoubtedly see. You've probably been linked to this page several times by the game client. There's an ad for the mystery box pretty much everywhere that you look. There's these really high production quality videos that are probably the best videos that Path of Exile ever gets made for it are the mystery box ads. There's a whole soundtrack you can download. There's all sorts of other things that are designed around promoting the idea that these mystery boxes exist. And whilst this theme hasn't resonated with everyone, it certainly has its fans. There's the Harlequin and there's the Ringmaster. There's certainly been people that have liked this creepy clown aesthetic, although there's other people that haven't liked this one. But there's been a lot of real hits amongst some of the previous mystery boxes. The Sin and Innocence cosmetics are, at least in my opinion, they're probably the best that Path of Exile has ever done. With the golden plate armor feel of the Innocence microtransactions and the very dark Sin aesthetic, and then the combined ones looking absolutely stunning. The Fire and Ice mystery box, whilst the combined pieces weren't so great, the individual ones look amazing as well, at least in my opinion. So there's a huge amount of work that goes into producing these cosmetics and into promoting them. So there is an ethical argument about loot boxes, and I don't want to make this video really tackling that. It's not an intervention into the loot box debates that are going on, especially amongst legislators in the European Union. This video was designed to address the maths behind whether or not they're a good value proposition. But because the ethical question is so hotly debated on the internet and on YouTube at the moment, I will state where I stand. Firstly, just for the purposes of full disclosure of any unintended bias, I am in favour of government regulations that either ban loot boxes outright or that classify games that have them in them as gambling products. Now, I've tried not to have this influence my video, but it may have done so unintentionally. Secondly, I think that Grinding Gear Games' loot boxes are probably the least awful in the industry from an ethical perspective, and that the company probably wouldn't have made them if it weren't for the fact that all of their competitors were doing so. With the Path of Exile loot boxes, there's full disclosure of all the odds. There is a full, clear list of all of the various things that are involved, that are available in them. None of the items in the mystery boxes impact gameplay, and none of them are exclusive to the mystery box. There is a timed exclusivity period, and that timed exclusivity period is typically 120 days, but after that, everything is available for sale individually. And so you don't have some of the time pressures that are involved when it's like, oh, you've already got 4 of the 5 pieces of the golden armor set. You're going to lose the ability to get that 5th piece forever if you don't just keep buying more mystery boxes until the 1 in 25,000 chance of getting the golden armor comes up. So I'm going to try and keep my ethical opinions out of the video and only talk about the numbers. But if you do want to discuss those ethical questions further, there's a number of other YouTube channels, not really Path of Exile specific channels talking about this matter, but gaming channels in general. 2 that come to mind to me are Riker and Bellular Gaming, but there's going to be more. There's definitely more of them. So, there's a mathematical problem that addresses the question of how many times do you need to repeat a random event until you are likely to get every possible outcome. So imagine someone that picks up a standard 6-sided die. So I'll specify 6-sided for those of you that are role-playing game buffs like myself. You may be familiar with the D4, the D8, the D12, and the D20, but we're going to talk about the D6. You're given a D6, a fair one, and you're asked to roll it over and over again until every possible number has been rolled at least once. So until you've had a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. And you're asked to predict how long will this take you on average. Now, intuition on this is difficult. People usually underestimate the number of tries that it takes to roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6 and they usually underestimate it by a considerable amount. And marketers are very aware of this and are very willing to prey on it. So, let's say that you roll your 6-sided die 12 times and you only consider whether or not you've had a 1. What's the probability that you get a 1? Well, let's start with 5 and 6 is your probability of getting a 1 on your first roll. Your probability of getting it your probability of not having got a 1 after your first roll. That's what we're looking for. So let's raise that to the power of 12. And here you'll see that you have an 11.215% chance of not having had a roll of 1 in your first 12 attempts. Now it gets a little tricky because the rolls actually are dependent upon each other. So once we've specified that after 12 rolls we did not have a 1, that actually influences whether or what the chances are that we'll get a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6 specifically on those 12 rolls, because we know that we've got absolutely 0 rolls of 1. So that means that it's not as straightforward as just saying, okay, well, there's six variables that each have an 11.21% chance to have not come up, so therefore, well, what's our chance? I don't know. That strategy doesn't lead us anywhere. There is, however, another strategy that will get a definitive answer for this. Now, I will point out that I am using 6 for a reason, and I'm using 6 because it is the number of labyrinth trials. And again, people often will complain about how they're playing in solo self-found, they've done 250 maps, they're level 94, and they still aren't Eternal Ascended because they just can't get that last labyrinth trial to show up. And again, you can run 12 labyrinths, you can run enough maps to get 12 labyrinths, and you still have an 11.21% chance not to have found the trial of piercing truth yet. And that's just one of the 6. So, I'll get to the working later, but it is 14.7 die rolls on average that you will need in order to roll your complete set. And the same applies for lab trials. It will take you 14.7 labyrinth trials that you find in maps on average in order to have your complete set and be flagged for the Eternal Labyrinth. Now, this does not mean that if you took 10,000 people and you instructed each of them to perform this experiment, that 5,000 of them would complete it in 14.7 or less, and 5,000 would complete it in 14.7 or more. That's a different mathematical concept called the median. What we're looking at is the average, and that means that if those 10,000 people all did this experiment, you would expect the total number of times they rolled the dice between them to be close to 147,000. Now, that's been talking about a set size of 6. I remember encountering this problem with larger numbers years ago, back when I played Magic the Gathering, a collectible card game. So the year was 2003, Christmas was near, and Mirrodin was out. Now, it was the new hotness in that game. Now, you don't need to know anything about Magic the Gathering, what it looked like in 2003, or what Mirrodin is, beyond what I'll mention here. Now, Magic the Gathering is sold in loot boxes, booster packs. I believe that's the industry term for them. And whilst the mechanics of those loot boxes have changed a little bit since, in 2003, each of them contained one of the 88 rare cards in the set, plus 14 cards of lesser rarities. Now I'm going to disregard the cards of lesser rarities, and I'm only going to focus on the rare cards, because with the comparative frequency of uncommon and common cards in Magic, at that time, the lower rarities were so much more common that compiling a set of them was almost a guarantee when you got a complete set of the rares. So I asked myself at the time, how many packs would I need to open myself to compile one set of every rare card in Mirrodin? And because of the mechanics of Magic, where 4 of a card is the limit that you're allowed to play in a deck, I was also wondering how many packs you would need to open in order to compile 4 sets. Now, I was able to solve the first problem, but I was not able to solve the second, although maths journals have come up with analytic answers to the second question too. What I want you to do here is pause the video for a second and write down your own guess. How many of these packs would I need to open on average in order to get one copy at least of each of the 88 cards in the set, given that you're getting one of them per pack? So remember, there's 88 rare cards, they're all of equal rarity, and one of those cards happens to be named Troll Ascetic, which we'll come back to later. So this is your last chance to think about this yourself. And 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. I've done the numbers so that you don't have to, and the answer turns out that it is almost 446 packs on average required in order to compile your complete set of Mirrodin. A large part of this comes about because getting the last card that you need is going to take you on average 88 packs. So let's talk a little bit about the methodology. In order to get the first card in your set, you have no prospect, you open a pack, you have no possibility of getting a duplicate in there at all. So probability that you get a new card in your pack, one that you don't already have, one that's not a duplicate, is 1. And the number of packs that you need on average to get your new card is just 1. To get your second card in your set, you have a 1 in 86 chance of encountering a duplicate. Sorry, 1 in 88 chance of encountering a duplicate. This means you have an 87 in 88 chance of getting a new card when you open a booster, one that you haven't already got, and you therefore need to open on average 88 divided by 87 packs in order to find this new card. Now, let's assume you've already got 2 of the cards in the set, and you want to see how many packs it takes to get your third. Again, same methodology. We have a 2 in 88 chance of having a duplicate. We therefore have an 86 in 88 chance of opening, when we open a booster, of getting a unique card, and therefore 88 on 86 packs on average is required to get there. And so these numbers are all pretty small at the moment. We're pretty much not getting any duplicates at the moment. By the time that we've got a quarter of the set, so we've got 22, on average, the next pack that we open is going to have a 25% chance of having a duplicate in it. So that means that 75% of the packs we open have a new card for us, one that we don't already have in our set. And it's going to take us 4 on 3 packs, so 1 and a third packs, to get our 23rd card. And so it continues, and you can see it's getting harder and harder to get your new cards. Then eventually, we've got half the set, and so now it's going to take us 2 packs on average to get a new card. We've got 3/4 of the set, and suddenly to get our 67th card, it's going to take us 4 packs on average. Then, right near the end, we've got 80 of the 88 cards. It's going to take us 11 packs to get that 81st. It's going to take us 12.5 to get that 82nd, and so on and so forth. Eventually, we get to the point that we have 87 of the 88 cards in the set, and to get that 88th card, we don't know which one it is, but to get it is going to take us on average 88 packs. Totaling this up, and thank you to this thank you spreadsheet program for doing the maths, so that the arithmetic, so that I don't have to. 445.3 packs that we're requiring. So that's a pretty monumental number, and I want you to think about your intuition. Did you think, when I asked you to guess the answer to this, did you think that it was going to be as high as 440? And I think the answer is no. For the vast majority of people, they think, oh yeah, maybe it's going to take 200. I know that when I went into it, I thought it was going to be about 300 before I did any of the numbers on it, and before I could think of that methodology. Now, my solution there is far from original research. This problem exists in mathematical literature at least as far back as 1712, and it's referred to occasionally in old obscure maths journals as the Dixie Cup problem. More recently, it's started being referred to as the coupon collector's problem. Note that, as we said, that the last card takes a very, very, very long time to get, but you actually have a lot of your set well shy of getting to that point. So, if we bring back up the spreadsheet, we'll have a look here and we'll see that you have 3/4 of your set after about 120 packs. Then it takes another 320 to get that last quarter. You have 7/8 of the set after 180, and you're getting that last 12.5% of the set. Again, it's a huge increase. Almost everything comes down to just getting these last 7 cards. So going from having 81 to having 88 takes more packs opened than going from having none to having 81 unique cards. So, very, 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 very much higher than intuition number of packs that's required. There's also the much harder problem that I was not able to solve or make any progress on myself of how many packs you would need to open in order to get 4 of every set. Sorry, 4 of every card in the set. And with a little bit of research, it seems like that getting your second and subsequent sets takes about 132 packs on average. I'm just going to take that at face value. I'm not going to research that. I'm not going to verify that. In fact, I wasn't able to follow the journal articles that discuss that question. So, the whole idea of these random loot boxes, whether it's in Magic or whether it's in other games, is that you make early progress and then you wind up being disappointed towards the end, because you remember early on you were getting a new piece of the set all the time, and now suddenly you're just not making any further progress. And that's by design. So, I was going to talk a little bit about variance as well. The standard deviation is a mathematical expression of how much variance is involved in compiling a set. Now, without actually trying to prove this, I'm just going to assert that the standard deviation for the Mirrodin collector example is about 113 packs. This would mean, for what's called a normal distribution, which is not exactly the probability we're dealing with here, it would mean that 84% of people would expect to get the average plus or minus 1 standard deviation. So that means 445 packs, give or take 113. That would be the number required for 84% of people, and 95% of people would be the average plus or minus 2 standard deviations, which seems like a big range. However, there are a couple of factors that make this not the most accurate, modeling for the collector's problem. And so I would have to refer to brute forcing with a computer, just making a million attempts and seeing at what point you were 95% probability to have a complete set, at what point you were 5%, and so on and so forth. But again, to revert to the lab trial example, where the numbers are a little bit smaller, your probability of not having a complete set after 25 trials is interesting. So let's just let the computer do the work for us. Your probability of not having a trial of piercing truth after you have found 25 trials in maps is more than 1%. That may shock people. People who think that it's that basically you've got 25, of course you've got the whole set. No, actually you're more than 1% to not have a trial of piercing truth. You're also more than 1% not to have a trial of burning rage. You're more than 1% to not have a trial of whichever individual trial you want to think of. So there's a very real chance that you won't have your full set by the time that you've found 25 trials in maps. So let's jump back to Path of Exile's loot boxes rather than some of these other examples from Magic the Gathering and the like. The critical difference between Path of Exile's loot boxes and Magic the Gathering is that in MTG, your duplicates are potentially someone else's treasure. If you opened 6 copies of Troll Ascetic, which is one of the rare cards in the set that I was talking about, and you were still missing something from your set, maybe Molder Slug you were missing, you could find someone else that had a Molder Slug and didn't have a Troll Ascetic, and you could organize a trade. Now, there's a whole secondary market around Magic the Gathering based upon the individual cards' power within the game and various other metagame decisions. So those trades may or may not be fair, but in theory, you can trade off your spare copies of cards to other people in exchange for copies of cards you're missing from your set. In Path of Exile's loot boxes, you can't. And this is the same with pretty much every game that runs the loot box that runs something similar to loot boxes in this game. All that your duplicates do is either there's some sort of sync that's added into the game for that reason. Path of Exile briefly had the salvage box, but also has the various ways that you can combine, say, 2 copies of the Harlequin body armor becomes one of the Dismal Harlequin body armor. 2 copies of the Ringmaster body armor becomes a Jovial Ringmaster body armor. So there's some utility given indirectly to duplicates, but it's pretty minimal. All of your duplicates basically will be a permanent reminder of the bad decision that you made in purchasing the loot box. So let's talk about the numbers of buying a complete set of one of the Carnival lines. So let's assume that you're someone that loves the Ringmaster aesthetic, and what you want is a complete set: the Ringmaster wings, body armor, cloak, character effect, weapon skin, Ringmaster weapon effect, and the Ringmaster portal, and then also the uncommon and common pieces as well. Now, I've run the numbers on the commons and uncommons, and they're almost guaranteed. If you buy enough to get a complete set of the rares, you are almost guaranteed to have a complete set of the uncommons and commons as well. So let's assume that your goal is to get these 7, the 7 rare Ringmaster pieces. What's your probability of hitting all of these? So this is a single set of 7 that you need. And using exactly the same methodology as we used to compute the Mirrodin set example, and the numbers are a lot easier in this case. In fact, I'll bring up those numbers, but they're much easier. And you'll see in the bottom left corner of the screen now, your first one, you got a 7 in 7 chance of not getting a duplicate with your the first time that you get a rare from the Ringmaster set. The second time you get a rare from the Ringmaster set, 6 in 7 that it's unique, which means 7 in 6 rares from the Ringmaster set on average are required. Then third piece, 1.4 on average required. Fourth, 1.75. Third, 2 and a third. Not third, that's the fifth. The sixth, you'll need 3.5, and the seventh, you'll need 10. Adding these up, and we get a sum of 18.15 that you're going to need. But this isn't 18.15 loot boxes. No, what we're talking here is 18.15 Ringmaster rares. What's the probability when you buy one of the loot boxes that you get a Ringmaster rare? Well, it's 20% you get a rare, and then it's 50-50 whether it's a Ringmaster or a Harlequin when you do. So that means that it's only a 10% chance that you get one of these Ringmaster rares, and you need 18.15 of them. That means on average you are going to need to buy 181.5 loot boxes to have one set of the Ringmaster rares on average. It's also the same probability to get one set of the Harlequin rares on average, 181.5. We put that into money terms, that is $545 US. That's quite a chunk of change to be spending on, basically cosmetic junk. If you wanted a set of both rares, so the Ringmaster and the Harlequins, this now becomes a set with 14 in the set, but 1 in 5 of your loot boxes contains a piece that's useful to you. Again, done the numbers so you don't have to. It's 227 boxes. 45.5 rares are required. That is, that's counting any of the rares, and that's going to be 227 boxes, which is USD 681. Now this doesn't touch at all on the double up sets, where you can turn your 2 copies of Ringmaster body armor into 1 copy of the Jovial Ringmaster body armor. I think that by the time you spent $681 on mystery boxes, you're probably not going to want to throw away some of the pieces by turning them into other colors. So my advice to anyone that is considering buying a full set of one of these aesthetics via lootbox is don't do it unless you are willing to throw a lot of money at having these aesthetics 4 months earlier than you otherwise would. So what about the second use case of these boxes, which is not buying until you've got a full set, but just buying a few packs to pick up low-hanging fruit, and then later on going and buying the missing pieces. This is a slightly more popular option than going absolutely nuts and trying to get a full set. Firstly, this will test your discipline. It's quite easy to go, okay, well, maybe you get lucky early on and you get the, let's say you miss the Ringmaster body armor, but you pick up the helmet, the boots, and the gloves pretty early on. At this point, it's very easy to lose track of discipline and common sense and say, well, I've already spent $45 getting these 3 pieces. That's a sunk cost if I don't get the body armor to go with them, and so therefore I'm just going to throw more and more money at trying to get the Ringmaster body armor. On average, it is still going to take you 70 boxes to open this specific one, so that's going to cost you on average $210. You get a lot of other stuff with it, but I don't think that's a very good value proposition at all. So let's talk about the set discounts that exist. Most cosmetics in Path of Exile, most cosmetic sets consist of a body armor that's 250 points, a helmet that's 130, boots that are 80, and gloves that are 80. Notice that this adds to 540. However, most of them are also sold as complete sets, at least once they become available for a la carte purchase 4 months after the release of the mystery box. Now, you'll notice here that they add up to 540 if bought separately, 420 if bought as a bundle. This means that actually, if you fluke the helmet very early on, that is actually not going to save you much at all. It's still going to cost you 410 points to buy the boots, the gloves, and the body armor to go with it. That means that that helmet has not been some $13 pull. That's actually been a $1 pull, because you would have been able to get it, assuming that you want the whole bundle, assuming you want the whole set. It's only going to be a $1 discount off getting the complete set later. So that means that the only thing that is in any sense a jackpot pull is getting the body armor, or the wings if you want the wings, or the cloak if you want the cloak. And potentially some of the weapon skins, weapon effects. If you actively want these, then there can be some value to getting those. But getting one of these pieces, the helmet, the boots, the gloves, is probably worthless, and getting the body armor is much less of a big win than it looks like, assuming that you will later go and buy the other pieces to complete your set. So, this means that essentially the only way that you're going to come out ahead if you purchase a bunch of the mystery boxes is if you get one of the pieces, like one of the wing pieces, that's expensive and that is not part of the overall set, and also that you would have purchased at full price later. I think that for the vast majority of people, this is not going to happen. The other case in which the boxes can be a not terrible value proposition is if you actively want bulk of the commons. So the Ringmaster hat, the Harlequin hat, the Ringmaster footprints, and the Harlequin footprints are of no benefit to get in bulk, but the building supplies, the spectators, the fireworks, the apparition, the parakeet, and the pranksters, they may have some merits to some people. They're not, I mean, hideout decoration is not something I'm into. I tend to just look around online for hideouts that look awesome and copy those, as people that have seen my toucan hideout will see. Thank you to the legend that posts there, that keeps posting their awesome hideouts on Reddit. But if you're someone that wants a lot of those, then they can make the entire pack an okay value proposition, but even then they're not great. So the verdict is, if you want one of the, obviously if you don't want either the Harlequin set or the Ringmaster set, then don't buy the box at all. But if you want one of these sets, then I really suggest waiting until 4 months after they come out, and then they will be available for a la carte purchase. One last thing I want to strongly warn people about is that loot boxes are put in as a sort of low cost way, as a low cost item in the store that's there to get people to fritter away the points they may have left over from a supporter pack that they've bought. I strongly advise you not to do that. Hold on to your remaining points, or if you want to buy minor things, buy more stash tabs until you've got enough of them for your own use. Don't buy mystery boxes with your remaining points, because they won't really give you, even assuming that you do want the products that are available from them, they won't really give you much of a discount on buying them later. Any case, that's all I've got on this video. If you've got any questions, definitely fire away below. I know that the ethical side of loot boxes is something that is a huge can of worms online, and I wanted to try and keep this video away from discussing that, but undoubtedly I'm sure a lot of you have opinions on those, so feel free to fire them away as well. And yeah, if you disagree, if you think that there's a strong value proposition to these, then definitely say so. I think, you know, if you disagree, if you think I'm completely wrong, or if you think that my maths is off the planet incorrect, then definitely speak up on that as well. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have a good one.